good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to New Year, New You. I am Jennifer Garibay, and we are here talking to Aziph. You know what? I didn't even ask you how to pronounce it. Is that how I pronounce it?
That's perfect. That's perfect. Azif.
Okay, we're talking to Aziph, who I have met through LinkedIn and the power of networking. And we are going to be talking about all things culture today. So, Aziph, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself so people can know a little bit about why you are a culture expert.
Hi. I'm from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and I currently work in the best telco in Malaysia called Celcom. And they hired me to kind of transform a culture that was 32 years old at the time into something more progressive, something more modern. So it's kind of a new field here in Malaysia. And people have started to realize, and big companies have started to realize that if you don't manage culture, culture will manage you. And that is not something that you want to have happen to your organization. So you have to be deliberate about managing how the employees feel and the experience that they have working in an organization, and which is why I feel corporate culture is such an interesting topic.
Yeah, no, 100%. How people are feeling about the place that they work is definitely going to affect their productivity, their happiness levels, and everything like that. So I guess I would ask you then a little bit about how you got started. How did you get started in the culture area? How does one do that?
It was a long and winding road. That's how you get there. I have never actually worked in HR, and I've never had that title culture in any of my job descriptions before this. So I know you work in trying to fit people into jobs. So what Celcom did was take a huge chance on me because I didn't have the normal corporate structure, growth, one nice job title after the other. I was an entrepreneur for 10 years. And before that, I worked in several organizations. And after this failed entrepreneurship experiment, decade long experiment, I worked in several government linked organizations where I held leadership posts. And one of my last posts I had was a CEO of a national agency, and I reported to the Federal Minister of Science and Technology. So
Well,
I had, enterprise wide responsibilities to manage things. And so they saw what I had to offer and saw that I had a voice and I was able to influence people. And I think that is critical in trying to build a culture, especially if you're trying to move into a new culture. So that's where we started this conversation. And you know how it goes, Jennifer. You need to have, it has to fit both ways, right? The company
right.
has to fit you and you have to fit the company. And we had a long conversation. It took more than 6 months, I think. And I met all their top leaders. And after really, really being comfortable that we fit each other, where I jumped on board and I joined Celcom.
That's amazing. I think that that's a great example for you job seekers out there. For those of you who watch a lot of my content, you know I'm always looking out for, how you can best position yourself in the workforce. And I think that this is a great example of transferable skills. Having people skills and having those, that sort of charisma can take you in a lot of different directions. So that's great. And I'm glad they took a chance on you because I know you're killing it over there.
Thank you so
Culture
much.
wise. So tell me a little bit about some of the initiatives maybe that you guys, I mean, obviously nothing proprietary, but at work, how do you keep up the culture? What does that look like in your role?
Well, it's been interesting, since COVID, because I typically, in my first year there, my boss said, I report to the chief HR officer, and he says, you need to meet people. So I got on a plane every single week, and because we're quite a large company and we're spread out throughout the whole country, and I would meet employees face to face. And I reported to the board a couple of months ago. I said, in that round of meeting people, I met 78.4% of the workforce. I
Okay.
physically met 98. So I thought that was wow. I did all of that.
That's
I didn't even
impressive.
realize I did all that. I thought it was impressive till the chairman of the board said, "What happened to the other 5.6% that you didn't meet?" I'm like, I'll meet them one day, I said. But you can't please everyone. But I
Right.
actually did that, and it was just a listening tour. Really, I just met people in groups, and I said, "Tell me what you're about, and tell me what it's like being an employee here. I'm new here. Tell me what it's like working in Celcom." And I spent almost a year just doing that, just listening to people and understanding what they're doing. And then we built some interventions, and mainly since COVID, it's been online like this. And I do this very, very often. I have groups around the country sit around their computers and speak to me. And it's the same thing, really. It's really about listening. I think that will take anyone so far just by being there and being present and being available for people to share with. It's
Oh
amazing.
yeah. No, 100%. Listening, active listening is something we really push on my team. So no, I think that's great that you encourage that. So would you say, I would ask you then, did it put you back coming to COVID? Like you had listened for a year and listened for so long, and then maybe perhaps some of that feedback wasn't necessarily viable anymore because you weren't in the office. So did you have to like adapt yet again in that way?
Well, yeah, I mean, we all have to change and adapt. But I found that because I had built the foundation, I hope, of trust, of people knowing who I am and knowing what I'm about, it became easier because these calls, I can't spend that much time, right? On building that, and especially in calls when you don't know each other. I mean, we've been interacting offline, at least. I mean, not physically, like I mean, not live like this, but at least we know each other. We know each other's content, which is very important. So they knew what I was about, and I was posting on our intranet. We have, workplace Facebook for the office, and I post every day there. So people know what I'm about and whom I'm about. So when we started engaging now online after COVID, it became much easier and much more seamless. People just started sharing and just started opening up. But most of the content or most of the comments that we receive were still valid because employee engagement is really the entire thing, right? It's not single experience. It's their whole holistic view of the organization. So if you address those things with them, I think we can really, really improve the culture. We have shown results in this past year, and I just had my performance review with my boss. I'm very happy about that. And he's definitely seen that the culture has changed because I mean, I didn't have to prove anything. I didn't have to show anything. He felt that the vibes are different. People are behaving differently. People are a bit very much more positive where they used to be very, very negative. So I think those are all wins for my team and the stuff that we do.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. And as one says, having leaders who genuinely listen helps strengthen the team. Yes, 100%. And I would definitely say that listening for a year definitely makes you a great listener and one of those people. Are you an ear to your family as well and the people in your personal life? Have they leaned on you for that skill set that you have as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, we grow as an individual, I think, and like you said, transferable skills, right? Some of the things that in my family comes to work, and whatever I learn at work transfers back to the family as well. So it's great, and especially my experience on LinkedIn. I tell you what, Jennifer, I'm considered a newbie because I only started really seriously creating content and going online every day since November. So it's only been a few months.
Okay.
And it's just such an amazing experience being on a different platform. I've been on LinkedIn since 2011. I didn't do
Okay.
nothing. And only since November, I've quadrupled my followership, and people are so much more engaged and so positive that it feeds me. So I take that energy and that vibes back to work and feed it back there. So it's awesome. It's a win-win for everyone.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, LinkedIn is such a positive place. I think removing a lot of not that other social media doesn't have value. I mean, there's a place for all of it, but I think taking a lot of the taboo things out of it, really making it a place for education, for positivity, has really allowed that atmosphere to foster itself. Because I feel that as well. I'll go on for a little bit and I feel like I can conquer the world. That's why I'm always posting inspirational quotes because I want to try to throw it back out there and hopefully inspire some other people like people on LinkedIn inspire me. It's great. It's great.
Exactly.
So I would want to ask you about what you said earlier, because I think it's really important for job seekers to know, and something I want to talk about for a little bit. So you were saying how you went back and forth with your company, and you wanted to make sure it was as good of a fit for you as it was for them. And so I'd love for you to speak a little bit more about why job fit for a job seeker is so important, because I feel like so often and of course people are in desperate situations, they need jobs, they need money, and I understand that, but oftentimes maybe it's better to hold out for a place that you can really love, really feel like you contribute to. So sorry, I'm doing all the talking now, but yes, love if you would do some talking about that.
No, that's a great point. But again, like you said, people are in different stages of their careers, and I have been working for over 20 years, over 2 decades. So I'm at a place where I, number one, have the ability to pick and choose, and number two, I'm able to contribute at a higher level to the organizations that I join. Right. So one of the key decision points for me was that would I have company wide responsibilities and would I have personal ability to make a change? Because to me, because that's what drives me. If I'm put in a place where I'm not able to affect change, I know that I'll be frustrated and I know I'll be cooped up and I know I wouldn't be able to live with myself. So I needed to
Right.
find a position where I could contribute what I wanted to do. So everybody needs to know where they are and what they can do, and have to know their triggers as well. Uh, like you said, I've been in desperate times, and I've been in places where I needed a job to pay the check, a check to pay the bills, right?
Right.
But right now, what happened was one our chairman recently resigned, and they went around with a camera and interviewed everyone. But what I said was that to me, what's important is at my stage of my career is finding a leader that I could trust and a leader that I could follow. So one of the decisions I made was that I looked at who was the chairman, who's the CEO, and who are these people, and could I trust them, number one, and could I put my trust in them for them to lead me to a place higher than where I am now, right? So I think that would be a good place to start for all of you when you're evaluating companies, to look at the leadership there and see, are these people who you would trust your time and your energy and invest in them, and believe that they will take you to a higher place.
No, that is so important, and I think that that is a great thing to call out, that people are in different aspects of their journey, and that they really do need to honor that. I totally agree. But yes, when you do have more of an option, for sure, try to find a place where you're gonna really enjoy it and be able to call it home.
Exactly.
So
And you and I both know, Jennifer, that the main reason people leave a company is not because of the company, it's because of their immediate boss, right? So you really want to get to know that guy a little bit. If they're on LinkedIn, stalk them on LinkedIn and see what's going on in their lives and in their feed. But just to be sure that, there's an opportunity for a real fit. Because if somebody's really the opposite of what you're looking for, it's going to be really tough, to build that trust and build that fit for you to enjoy what you're doing at work.
right. No, I totally agree. So, would you have any other suggestions for job seekers, maybe besides LinkedIn, maybe in their interview or something? How can they get to know that boss better and sort of like test that leadership, if that makes
Yeah,
sense?
well, yeah, I mean, we posted about this as well, about the questions you should ask in your interview. And I think it was Serena who had this viral post blow up about the questions that he asked during her interview. And the recruiter actually said, or the hiring manager actually said, we hired you because of these questions that you asked. So she was asking things like, it's really about trying to find that cultural fit. What are you about? What's your thoughts about working after hours or before time? What are your thoughts about balancing family and workplace? How do you reward people who put in extra effort, for example? Because some people really place so much emphasis on that. We want you to show up and we want to see you and want to have you in front of us and perform and sometimes that doesn't fit with many people who have a lot of other things going on in their lives. So you kind of want to know that up front, right? Before you accept that offer, you want to know whether your boss expects to see your face 10 hours a day, or he's happy to leave you at your own pace as long as you deliver whatever responsibilities is given to you. So those kind of questions you can ask during the interview itself, and try and also look at sources out there. There's a lot of online resources that you can find out about the company, Glassdoor, for example. And so there's
Yes.
many of those resources that you could check out before you join some
Yeah.
organization.
100%. I highly recommend Glassdoor, guys. If you don't already use it, they have ratings and great places to access interview questions where people can go afterwards. So definitely check it out. It's a great thing to look at. So in regards to culture, and there may not be an answer for this. It may be just your opinion, but would love to know your opinion in that regard. What is your take on sort of overarching culture versus your immediate team culture, and which one is more important to your happiness, would you say?
Well, for an individual's happiness, it probably is their immediate team that they're working with. And like I said, it's the immediate boss, because we know the numbers. People quit because of their immediate boss. So when I work in a large organization and we know that those things are so important, we test those with our employee engagement surveys, for example. We do regular pulses to find out what people are feeling in their respective teams, and we feed back that information to each individual leader. So if you have more than, because we have like a anonymity thing, so if you have more than 10 people in your team, you'll get a result of that survey, and you can take immediate action on which areas are they feeling a little bit stressed about, they're feeling they're not getting enough support with. So individual leaders at even that smaller scale, with only 10 people in their teams, are able to access that data and put in interventions that would help them become better leaders for their team. So I think in that regard, it is the small teams that make up the larger culture, because culture is really just a compilation, if you will, of all the feelings in these little groups. And that makes up the entire organizational culture. But of course, we also can define corporate culture as tone from the top. So from the very top, the CEO downwards, and I work very closely with the CEO about getting those messages out and getting people to understand his vision and the vision of the top management team, so that everybody is kind of aligned on the same page.
Right. No, that makes total sense. And feedback is such a vital part of that mechanism, and understanding where people are at. But I think feedback is just another fancy word for saying listening, which we've been going
Yeah,
at again and again and again. So it's just about listening to people, honoring their feelings, where they're at in their process, and really taking that into account.
right.
So
Right.
no, love that. Great stuff.
And as a
So, oh no,
company,
go ahead.
Jennifer, we try and provide as many opportunities for that feedback as possible. Of course, if you talk about culture, Asian culture, like where I'm from, Malaysia, and generally Asian culture is very respectful. It's very hierarchical, if you want to say that. It's very safe face. Don't embarrass anyone. Don't say anything in front of people that would embarrass anyone. So that's very central to our identity as a people. So it's hard, to get people to have difficult conversations. It's hard to kind of get people to give feedback. So one of the things we're doing right now is trying to improve meetings, because as you know, in any organization, there's meetings all day long. So we wanted to make sure that the meetings are more efficient. And one of the things that we wanted to put in was this feedback loop. So we have to actually train people and say it's okay to say these sort of things in this situation, in a controlled environment of a meeting, because all of us have the same objective and intention. We want to improve things. So it's okay to say these things. And, maybe for Americans, we don't have to train them to do that. They'll just say it, whatever's
They
on their
just
mind.
complain on their own.
But for Malaysians, we actually have to say and give examples. It's okay to say this to your boss. It's okay to, say something needs to be improved. So yeah, that's kind of some cultural nuances that we needed to be aware of.
No, and I think that that's so important because it varies from company to company. I can say for sure that I have never worked in a place that's quite like Google. I feel there, and I will say it on the internet that I have broken down like crying in a meeting one on one with my boss before, because that's how comfortable I feel with her, because she's made me feel that comfortable and open and honest, and they encourage us to share what we're feeling. And COVID's hard and working from home is hard, and so if you can find that space with a team that listens, that's empathetic, and lets you be vulnerable, it's truly a great place to be, guys. So I encourage you
Exactly.
to stick around and to make that known. I always like to elevate that to my boss, because it's good for culture too. Let them know they're doing a good job,
Of
and
course.
give that feedback to them too.
Yeah, of course. And again, in our culture, it's also not so normal to be public about praise as well. And that's also something we need to encourage and campaign. We're actually right now campaigning it, using it on our intranet, and have this button to say praise and say, why are you happy with this, and this person? And we encourage people to do that every day. But that's something new for us, because that's not normal. We don't go around and saying great job, because that's just not how we operate. But we know it's good for morale, and we know it's good for human beings to receive that, and we all of us know how good it feels. So why don't we share that, right? Why don't we give that good feeling to our teams as well? It doesn't cost any money, but the rewards are so much greater.
100%. And I think that's a great segue into engagement, which I want to talk about a little bit as well. So, COVID obviously has been happening for who knows how long, and some places are definitely in better shape than others. But speaking for myself in the US here, we're not doing much still. And we are most definitely working from home. So, would love to hear your thoughts on how you guys have been staying more engaged from home, or how perhaps maybe others can stay more engaged with their team, and keep up that communication and culture.
Of course. First things first is I hope with President Biden now it'll be a bit more organized in terms
Ooh,
of managing how you manage COVID, because we are very organized in Malaysia. We do the government did everything that it could to make sure people got safe. But as soon as we opened up, and now it's the second wave, it's become much worse than the first wave. So now they're shutting down again, and obviously I'm working from home. But like you said, communication is so important. So we also kind of train people to do that. How do leaders communicate with their teams? And we're saying more communication is better. Err on the side of more communications than less communication. So the more FaceTime you get like this, the more Zoom calls, the more Teams calls you have, it's better. But we're also trying to limit the times, because, as you know, because it's online, sometimes people feel, oh, you're on 24 hours, or you can have meeting after meeting. And some days I literally just sit at the table for 8 hours straight, and I can't even get up because there's a meeting starting immediately after the first meeting. So we're trying to address that now. We're trying to make sure that meetings don't end on the hour. So at least people have 5-10 minutes between meetings to do whatever they need to do. These are human beings after all. And it makes a lot of sense. So in terms of engagement, I feel right now there's a lot better engagement, if I can say that, because there's a lot more FaceTime in terms of having online meetings, as opposed to before. We're sitting in our own corner of the office, and actually somebody's sitting next to you, and you don't really talk to each other. But now you're kind of forced to. And what's good about online engagement is also that it is actually archived, and it's recorded, and you can record meetings, and the notes and the transcripts are there, and it leads to much clearer understanding for both parties. Because sometimes in face-to-face meetings, if you don't ask for clarity, you can go out the room and 10 people can have 10 totally different understandings of what that meeting was about, right? But
right.
with a recorded online meeting like this, we could go back to the recording and say, what did I actually say, and is this clear enough? So I feel that's one of the pros, one of the advantages of having online engagements like this.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Totally agree. Well, speaking of that, on our last topic of culture here, we got about 5 minutes left before I'm going to let you run off. Oh, and I got to say hello to Gina because she's here. Hey, Gina.
Hey,
Nice to see
Gina.
you. But would love to hear, I guess, like, what's your favorite part about culture? I like to ask people this. It's kind of a really broad question, so I'm interested to hear what your answer is. But what's your favorite part about team culture and why?
For me, it's about having real engagements and real relationships built, human to human kind of touch, because that's what it requires. You can't build a culture uh, by hiding behind a desk or not being authentic about who you are. So that's my favorite part because I get to kind of speak to people on a personal level, and I get to kind of uh, tease out from them. Some of them have been 30 years been hiding behind a facade of who they think their professional persona should be. But my work allows me to kind of dig deeper and kind of break those facades down and see the real people behind them. And I feel this has been so instrumental in my success in Celcom because I've started to break down these kind of silos that were there artificially because people felt this is how I'm supposed to look or this is how I'm supposed to perceive somebody. And just by breaking those down and having real human to human kind of communications, that really blossomed, and we saw real improvement in actual business performance. And that really is my favorite part because by improving something as ethereal of somebody say fluffy like corporate culture, it actually does bring real results to companies, and I'm happy that my team and I are able to contribute to that in a real way.
No, that's amazing. I can attribute to that working as well. I know when, there's always ups and downs on every team. And I've noticed that when we get to sort of a valley on mine, we usually try to plan, some sort of, offsite is what we call it, just like time to be together and do trust building and team building. And we always come back from that stronger, more cohesive, able to work together just better, and everyone's just happier. So can definitely speak to that firsthand. And usually you see metrics improve too. So it's not silly and it's not fluffy. And I think more people higher up need to pay attention to that.
Exactly, exactly.
And we have one question and we have a little time for it. So,
Sure.
if the employee has a totally different idea on culture, how can he or her communicate and engage the idea to traditional bosses who refuse to change?
Well, first of all, shout out to all of my audience who's coming on board to your live, Jennifer. It's so amazing what LinkedIn allows us to do is to
I love
open
it.
up different audiences. So Nur Wahida is probably from Malaysia. She, well, bosses bosses need to change. They need to adapt and pivot as well. And part of what I do in my practice is try and have as much open communications with the big bosses as I can because one of the ways of doing that is showing them the metrics, like you were saying, showing them the numbers, and why my surveys are so important because we actually get to see relationships between if somebody has an issue with communications, for example. I don't feel that I have open and trusting communications in my team. We can show how that relates to so many other things in their teams. So that would improve team performance, that would improve productivity, that would improve attendance, for example. So those data points are so important for especially big bosses because then you get through the haze that they're in and say this is what you need to be laser focused on because it will translate to something real and something beneficial for you in the future. One of the things that you really have to understand is that these bosses have been working for 20, 30 years and they've been doing something good. They've been doing something well, which is why they are in the C suite. That's why they're in these positions because they performed over the last 20, 30 years. But the way they have performed may not translate to what we need right now. So this is something that we need them to understand that and thankfully where I work they all understand this and they all know that this new era that we live in requires a different sort of skill sets and different sort of competencies that they're all willing to embrace. So which is why it's important to find a place to work that people understand where you're coming from.
No,
Thanks,
I love
Nurwahida.
that. Yeah, no, meet them on their level. I love that. You know, they respond to metrics and clearly specified things. So I think that if you approach them with that, that you're going to have a lot more luck in that regard. And I hope that you can get them to change, because you deserve to work in a place with great culture, just like we all do. So that is about it for us, guys. Aziph, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I'm sure my audience appreciates it. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. Everyone on the replay, I appreciate you tuning in as well. I'm about to go call it an evening. And Aziph, I hope you have a wonderful day in that beautiful backyard. Is that real
Thank
grass or is that turf?
It is turf. I just got tired mowing lawn, so this looks much nicer.
I do not blame you at all. I'm in the process of getting some. So you enjoy. Thank you so much for being here. And
Thanks,
good night,
everyone.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.